Welcome to Strange Unknowns, and thanks for tuning in. The story you are about to hear took place in 1994 in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. It details the experience of a man who as a young boy went inside a cylinder-shaped UFO. When I was very young, around the age of 3 or 4, I was at home with my dad, who had just fed me lunch. My mom was at work, so it was just the two of us, and when that would happen, he'd make some crazy thing for lunch. This time it happened to be spaghetti that may have well been noodles, soaked in ketchup with garlic. He wasn't exactly the best cook, but I didn't know any better at that time, and gladly ate it. Shortly after eating, I was getting ready to take a nap. I would usually run around a bit before doing this, but something in that lunch made my stomach turn into a volcano. I had an emergency brewing down there, and to a kid my age, it was hell. I rushed to the bathroom, but failed to make it there on time. Just barely. I used the bathroom, then took off the soiled clothes to get some non-destroyed ones. I knew this wouldn't make my dad very happy, and boy was he not happy. Normally, I was able to take care of business in time without a problem, but not this time. He was usually working the time my mom was, and my uncle would watch me for the midday hours, so he wasn't exactly used to taking care of that situation at my age. He sent me to my room and started to clean up the disaster, so I took a nap. After a good while, he didn't come into my room and say I could leave time out, so I decided to go out and ask him. I found him asleep next to some folded laundry. It was at this point I decided to run away. I don't know why. I didn't really think anything of it. I just quietly opened the front door and left. It was a perfect summer day. The skies were blue, and the sun shone through the leaves of the surrounding trees a vibrant green. Absolutely perfect day. I walked down the steps of my porch and headed for the top of my driveway. When I got there, I looked back at my house and thought about going back, but then I thought, he's napping. I won't be gone long. I wanted to go to this park that was down the road, probably a little less than a quarter mile away, but short enough distance that I could reach it at that age. It was a nice walk, and I was just checking out rocks and finding bugs on my way to the park. I usually would cut through the field behind my house to get there, but I just walked on the warm road that was nearby instead. My dad and I would go out into that field, and he would teach me about the different bugs and plants of the area. It was one of my favorite activities. I was so curious about those things, and I loved nature. I finally made it to the park, surprised that my neighbors didn't see me and call my dad. My mission was complete. Nobody was at the park. It was all mine. I was just so thrilled because the weather was perfect, and I had this moment of serenity that to this day is one of my favorite memories. It's like my happy place. I think we all have one of those. As I was getting ready to head back, I was appreciating the nature around me, and then I looked up towards the sky. Not too high above me, I saw this shiny, grayish, dull chrome-looking cylinder glinting in the sun. I remember what it looked like vividly. It wasn't incredibly big, maybe about 5 feet wide, and it was probably about 12 feet tall, I'd say. It could have only been 100 to 150 feet up in the air. It had 2 antennae on top, and at the bottom of the cylinder was kind of like this dark glass-looking dome lens. It didn't move around or anything, and it was slightly tilted. The last thing I remember is just watching this thing in the air. This is where things start to get a bit hazy for me. I remember waking up and I was no longer at the park, but I knew where I was. I had went inside the UFO. I don't remember how I got inside of it, but I knew I was in the cylinder now. I'm not sure if it's because I was a child and I didn't know about these things yet, but I was not scared. I had no fear at all. There wasn't much room inside, and I was standing on the glass stuff that I could see from below, and I was able to see out of it from here. I could see the park. I could see the church that was near the park, and I could see much of the field that was by my house. It was pretty dark inside this thing, lit only from the outside below. It was pretty crammed, I thought, even for me, and I was tiny. The floor was just this glass that I was standing on, and there was a ledge that came up to my shoulders. I wanted to be on the ledge instead because the height made me uneasy, but I didn't try to climb it. I noticed that there were some pipes on the inner walls that came out of the ledge area and ran straight up to the dark ceiling, making the place feel even more cramped. These pipes ran up in groups of about 3 or 4. Everything inside this space was the same color. Not the same as the exterior, but a dark gray. It looked like everything in there was made of the same material, or powder-coated, the same color at least. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but someone was saying something to me. I remember responding to them and asking questions, but I could not see them. In my memory, they were just out of view and in the darkness. I was under the impression that they were sitting on the ledge. Even though I can't remember what was being said, I knew I could trust this person, and I was enjoying myself. It felt like I wasn't in there for long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I really can't say. The next thing I remember, I was back on the ground, at the park, and when I looked up for the cylinder, it was gone. I started walking over to the church, not really sure why, I was just drawn to it and went. My family was not very religious, but I guess I was just curious. In hindsight, I would have to assume that the day this occurred was a Sunday. I opened the swinging doors and was surprised to see the place was packed. A young priest was giving a sermon, and when I walked in, everybody's heads turned towards me. The priest said something like, "Looks like we have a special guest," and everyone was smiling and laughing. An old woman beckoned me to come to her, which I did, and I sat on her lap. I watched the man in the front continue his message to these people. Shortly after, 2 police officers came into the church, and the old woman waved them over. They came to me and brought me outside, and my dad was there. He looked so concerned, but hugged me and said I was gone for a long time. He gave me this long speech when we got home about the dangers of what I had done, and that there were bad people in the world who could have taken me away, never to be seen again. This was pretty heavy, and it had a lasting effect on me, and I never did anything like it again. I never told him about what I actually experienced. In fact, I have never told anyone about the craft, and when I talk to my dad about that day now, he says I was gone for hours, and that luckily someone from the church made a call to law enforcement saying I was there. It did not feel like I was gone for that long, and when I was a kid, even an hour felt like an eternity. So how could I have been gone for so long? Since the event, I have gone on Google Earth and brought the camera view over to the point where I was in the air, trying to match the perspective of my memory. Besides the differences time has made on that area, it looks just like my perspective when I was inside that cylinder. The whole event never felt scary like you see in the movies. My memories of being inside that cylinder are completely without fear. In fact, just the opposite. It may sound weird, but if I was given a chance, I would go back inside. I felt only love from the being in there. Almost like we knew each other for a very long time. It kind of makes me sad knowing I haven't been able to see them since. It's hard to describe, but it truly is an undying longing. I feel in my heart that I will one day be with them again. I've thought about this a lot, and would like one day to try being hypnotically regressed so I can learn what was said that day with the entity in that craft. I've read countless reports and stories where people who experience similar things describe a feeling of loss when they leave the presence of these beings. Could this be a genuine feeling that was conjured up by the person themselves? Or is this a form of camouflage used to emotionally trick the mind of a human in order to get done what they need to do with them? If you have a story like this and you'd like to share it with the world, please feel free to leave the story in the comments section below. If you'd rather you keep your anonymity intact, you can always email me at strange.unknowns@gmail.com. And if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I would like to see this channel grow. And with that said, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good weekend.